use the multiple stream, not multi, multiple stream framework to analyze, to explain, or to help explain why the Chinese government introduced the universal two-child policy in 2016. And it was, that January 2016 is when the universal one came in, and then, which means you can still talk about much earlier decades, but you've got to get in the examiner's head that the exact policy you're looking at, because I know there was other two-child policies before the universal one, and I think it was January, I'm not, I can't remember, it was the beginning of the year, so you're, in this essay, I use the multiple stream framework to help explain why the Chinese government introduced the universal two-child policy in January 2016.
So I focus on the period after in this period, not the so early.
You can. Some of this is relevant, but
I need to focus on this.
You need, yes. This sentence is key to the introduction. So, because of otherwise, when the examiner sees lots of other dates here, so you've said, so I mean, you need to check dates. My understanding is that it was January 2016, but I could be wrong, I know that there's another two-child policy, but it's not the universal one, but as far as I know, the big policy changed. And then you should say what, so after this, you say the evidence suggests, and then that's your argument, and you should link it to the multiple streams, so something like, there's lots of things you could argue with this, because there's evidence pointing to different things, but you could argue that I don't know, the change in government, let's just say change in government, but I'm just making this up, says a change in government helped, led to the coupling, you need to mention something to do with the multiple streams, led to a window of opportunity for policy change. Something you need. The bit that you must focus on. The evidence suggests. What in all your writing does evidence suggest? And you must mention something to do with the framework. So it's either window, coupling, streams. You don't have to mention them all. Just one of them is fine. But don't just say the evidence suggests that media interest led to a change in policy. You need to mention media interest. It's all about this led to this led to policy change. It's a sequence, a causal chain, and you've got to tell me what led to policy change. That's what you're trying to explain. So you might say media interest led to I don't know, the national mood changing, and then in the political stream which led to policy change. You just have to Because if you say you're going to use the multiple streams framework, you need to give some indication here. This bit is less important for your essay. This bit is vital. Yes, yeah. You don't have to do this, but it helps. Okay, so that's done that. I did one of these yesterday. Let's see where we are in terms of the policy content.
The policy content is also in.
Okay, so what I suggest, well, the student I suggested it in their draft, and then they came in and they did it. So I would suggest, you do periods, and they've got a heading. So pre 1980, and then you tell me everything that's happening there, and then 1980 to 2000, and then tell me everything there, and then 2000 to 2018, well 19 now, yeah, well 16, it's a policy change. Yeah, so you group all this material here in the 1970s and 80s. You tell me a little bit about what happened there, and then a little bit about that, and then what happened in this period. The other way to do it is you do one child policy, and there's a heading. This is a heading it's a kind of policy content. Well, that's right on the back. So you would write China's family planning policy. And that would be your heading. That's your heading. And then you'd have a subheading, one child policy. And then under here you might have key dates, like 1970s and 1980s, and then tell me what happened there. And then you might have the two-child policy, and that again is a subheading. The main thing is you have to find some way, whichever way you do it, you have to find some way of grouping this information in your policy content so that the examiner knows the difference between the one-child policy and the two-child policy. They're less interested, so the examiner wants to know a little bit about when they changed. So things start to change at a certain date, and then you could do something like this with the dates. Is it 1978 or 79? I can never remember. 1978 to 2013, and then 2013 to present. Or 2000 to 16, depending. The universal. There was another one in 2013. I can't remember what it's called. And in 2016, the one about if both children were only children. So, yeah, and it's just giving the key information and what there were sanctions. What happened? What happened to women or families that had more than one child. So it's about giving some overview to this, but remember that this is your focus, the 2016 universal one. So that's your policy content section.
Yes.
This is your introduction. The overview. Yeah, so it's about even something as simple as this, 1970s to 1980s. And then you just put put an underline, and then here you put 2000 to 2013, you put an underline. in this period, China's population has been showing. So it's helping the, examiners don't always read everything you write, well, they skim through it to begin with. So if you do these bullet headings, put them in bold or something, and they can be in line here. I'm going to find another article that's used it. Using headings is can be very strategic of how you do it. And actually, no, this one hasn't done it. But you could run this here. So you have a colon, and then your text goes there. So you don't have the gap. So it's not like lots and lots and lots of headings, because you've already got a heading here. So this bit goes in bold, you put a colon, and then you run that in there. And then can you see that on a page, the dates are standing out to somebody reading this, that it is a history, but they've grouped it by date. Women in the civil service, yeah. And then the person's also used the headings there. So yeah, you've got that date and that date. That's quite a long paragraph. So is this now your analysis?
Yeah, but actually at that time I'm not very clear about the.
Yeah, because you're using labels that are not in Kingdon's framework, so that's why it would have been confusing. The other thing you need to do is, you're using multiple streams. It's not that this I take it is the end of your policy content. Yeah, so you need to mention legislation. Here you've said they proposed it. I want to know when the legislation, and that I think is January 2016. So here this is analysis. You got to be careful. So it's okay.
But if I after the overview I write analysis.
Yeah. So this can be left until later, because you're saying that this is you starting to say why they did it, but you're going to say you're going to use Kingdon's framework to help explain why they did it. So the beginning part is not why they did it; it's just what is it? What is the policy? Yeah. I know it's difficult when students they do a little mini history, but you've got to make sure you're only doing you're only sort of adjustments. Yeah. So this is fine. This is all good. Yeah, that's okay, as long as you put the legislation, maybe reduce some of that. But the main thing is to have the key pieces of legislation or proposals. How many times did the policy change between 2017 at 8 and 2016? There was 2 or 3 changes at least that you can mention. So then when you get to this section, so have you looked at the template? It's in Moodle. So before you get to the analysis, you have to detail the framework, some information about the framework.
Yes, I think I mentioned. I have mentioned
Next, listing the elements of the framework. Yeah, so you need to put them. Yeah.
Put them after the overview.
After the content. So it should be policy content, but you don't call it policy content. Policy content, then key features of multiple streams framework, and then analysis. but don't call it policy content, call it China's family planning policy or universal two-child policy. I prefer that actually, because that is what you're trying to explain, universal two-child policy, and you're just telling the story of how you got to there, of the sort of key things. So I actually think it should be called
Universal
two-child policy, yeah. And I would put 2016,
Yes.
January 2016. Just so that will remind the examiner. That was what you said you were going to do. You finished your introduction. Oh, now they're going to explain the universal two-child policy. And then key features of MSS, and then your analysis. And your analysis should really be structured as problems, policy, and politics, and then discussion, which some people call, the window bit, and then your conclusion. So these are subheadings.
Subheading is just like the problem string and.
Yeah. They're all subheadings under that. I'm confusing it. Under that, this is main. This is a heading. These are subheadings under analysis. So you tell me what's happening in the problem stream. How are people finding out that that there's demographic problems, that kind of thing. Then policy, who's talking about family planning policies? Are there any alternatives? That kind of thing. And then what's happening in the political field, the national mood, and in the governments, etc. You should think about the international sort of arena. That might come into problems. It might be getting into the media, that a lot of international comparisons with other countries, like say the economic situation, or politics. There was international kind of criticism of China, so that could come into politics. And then when you get to discussion section, you're saying why these sort of activities, as it were, came together. What triggered the change? Was it because lots of studies were showing that China didn't have, had too many young people and not enough people to support old people, demographic problems? Was their economy going to suffer if they didn't get more children born? Or was it because of media interest from the, criticisms from the international community? Or was it simply a new election and a new leader who felt whose personal views were, values were, that we shouldn't, government shouldn't try to control fertility and punish people, etc. It could just be one person or one small group of leaders. There's for an essay like this, there's no hard and fast correct answer. You just have to. It is your opinion, but it's your opinion based on what you've done for the reading. So you've got to try and make an argument that it was because of international communities' criticism of China, or the economic argument, or whatever. And you can say the evidence suggests, or you can say the evidence isn't clear what caused the policy change, but here are some suggestions. It's about trying to just have a guess, but you use that sort of language. This language, the evidence suggests the change happened because of this. It's all about suggests, not the evidence shows, or you're not coming up with proof or anything like that. You're just saying the evidence suggests it was likely. This was likely.
About conclusion, I just conclude some key points and some relevant and then put some implication and maybe some limitation.
Yes, so you should, for your conclusions, you should think, there's lots of things, so you need to think as well about the use of research and where research, what, you know, so you can focus on the studies that were coming out that were showing that China's demographic, how it was changing. There were these studies, but you don't know whether the government took notice of them. But you can talk about that. You can say there were studies, academics were bringing out these studies about China's demographic shifts, and you can say they may or may not have played a part in the Chinese government. For any government, it's hard to know what they're thinking and what they're doing. But with the Chinese government, it's quite difficult because there's not, you know, they're not putting a lot of information out there. But with all governments, that's the case, unless they explicitly say it was because of some research. They don't often do that. But you can talk about the fact there was a body of research and it might have influenced the government. Or there might not be any information at all. Or it might be the information about the economics. I think you should be able to find, you know, so you need to talk, so you can talk about that in your conclusion. You can talk about, more generally, just about the policy area. Are there any studies done that are showing that people are having more children, or has maybe the Chinese government left it too late and changed policy? Maybe they should have changed this policy a few years ago. So it's having a sort of forward thinking. Don't just repeat what was in your study in your paper and say, I did this and I found that. That's just a summary of what you did. It's not your conclusions. And you can draw conclusions about the Chinese government and how difficult it is to find out information. It's the discussion section here. This is the bit where you can be creative, where the students can really get your own opinion, your own views into the essay. The rest of the essay your essay could sound like anyone else's essay, but these parts we'd be looking for originality.
My own
Yeah. It needs to be based in what you've done, or on other reading, particularly if you were thinking about, you know, whether Chinese families were having more than one children. You should try to cite some literature, but it's where you can be original. How do you pull it all together? There's an originality we'd expect to see here. And thinking about the use of research, you can think about your own government and the style of government. You can think about, you could refer to population policies in other countries. So, for instance, in Italy, the government is paying, you know, there's financial incentives to encourage people to have children because they don't have replacement. It's like an average of one child, you know, for every 2 adults. So China might need to do something else. So you can talk about that, but you should try to back it up with research literature. You don't need to read the other papers, but you should show that you've found some other literature on other things that other countries do in terms of family planning policy. Perhaps China has got to, you know, learn from other countries. You know, if that's my understanding, is that Chinese families haven't all rushed out to have 2, 3, 4, 5 children. The children cost money. You know, women want to work more if there's no childcare. That's the same in the UK and other countries. There's lots of things people think about before they have children. So this is where we'd expect more originality based on your reading and wider reading. If you want to have another go at it and then show me, I won't be able to give you comments on it, but I can tell you just if you're on the right track. Because this was one I was worried about. Mainly, the main reason I was worried was these bits.
At the time, I'm not very clear about the main argument.
It's one of the easier policies to at least get
analysis and use.
There's enough written about it that you shouldn't be short of information, and I think there's enough things to choose from for what you could focus your argument on, you know. And yeah, there's enough to talk about. Some students have chosen very strange policies, and I think, you know, it might be quite hard to find an argument with that. But this should be easy enough. Yeah, and just make sure you're precise when you're describing the policy and the legislation. Yeah. Okay, good.
Thanks,
And everything else is on your other assignments, are they okay? Yeah.
But cause it's a little bit hard for me for assignments. Maybe for my English and I'm not a major on policy or the sociology before, so it's a little bit.
Yeah. So what was your first subject?
I major in law.
Law, yeah. So you're one of the very few students who probably are at a disadvantage at this point. But yeah, you can.
But this is not the reason for I cannot do it.
No, yes. And every year we have a few students who either have done law or journalism, or you know, they're still social sciences, but they're not the same as sociology. So students tend to struggle a bit at the beginning, but you know, they do very well in the end, most of them. So you'll catch up. Yeah. Which methods modules did you do?
This term?
Last term or this term? Anyone?
Oh yeah, the systematic design and planning and the non-systematic complex. Yeah, and the quantitative and data analysis.
Ah, right, okay, yeah. So you're doing advanced quantitative now? No.
No, introduction of quantitative, and this term is only the systematic.
Oh, you did 3 last term.
Yes.
Yes. Ah, right. Okay. Yeah.
So recently I have 5 deadlines.
Yes. Yeah. And so, are you doing systematic review for your dissertation? Yeah, it'd be quite hard for you to do one of the others because you haven't taken the advanced modules. So, yeah.
I mean, it's quite harder for me.
If you wanted to do a qualitative piece of work, it would be harder because you haven't taken the advanced qualitative.
And I selected 2 systematic modules, so maybe I will use
Yes, you should probably. It's good to do a systematic review because you are learning about the other methods. Yeah.
But I'm not sure about my topic of dissertation is fit in the systematic method.
Most topics can, yeah. So what are you interested in?
Actually, I'm interested in the gender and family.
Mm-hmm.
And about my dissertation topic is about the gender discrimination about in the China academic circles. I mean, just like the female scholars, they cannot get very good positions, just like this. And I'm not. But maybe I want to change it.
Yeah, well, you need to think about that quite soon. So there's a meeting tomorrow, isn't there? Yeah.
I think I'm interested in family and about marriage. Maybe about the marriage relationship, the effect of the marriage relationship in the care in the female's care.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that makes sense. Yeah. There'll be enough literature. You know, you might want to go broader than China and look at other countries. But yes. Yeah. What's the relation? What's the effect of marriage on women's careers? Yeah.
I do think it's
Yes. Yeah. That's a question for a systematic review. Yes.
And compared with the gender discrimination.
Well, you'd
I just want to.
Yeah. You'd have to unpack. You have to unpack all that with a systematic review. What you're actually meaning. Yes. Yeah.
Maybe in the dissertation workshop I can ask.
Yes. I will be there tomorrow, so there'll be some small groups, and you'll get to talk to staff members who will help. But you should try to, not by the end of January have your topic and your method. But it's not impossible for you to do a qualitative piece of work, but I wouldn't recommend it if you haven't done the advanced module. No.
So for these 2 topics I mentioned, are they fit in the quantitative method or the systematic review?
The systematic review, yes,
It's okay.
Yeah.
I can use this.
Yes, yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, I will
so
see you
much.
tomorrow. Yeah.
I'm so patient.
Oh no, it's okay.
I'm so nice.
All you have to do.
And
if you, because you're doing 5, if you're struggling with any deadlines, let me know, and I can probably try to get an extra week for one of them. Yeah. Yeah, because doing 5 is very difficult. Yeah. So email me.
Okay.
All right. Well,
Thanks a lot.
thank you.
And also quiet and cozy work
Yeah.
environment. Back the stairs, back in the middle.
Oh yes, and is the light?
I have
No,
a-
it's the light. Oh, no, the light's not. Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Otherwise, it's very dark.
Yeah. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.